Hey, and welcome back to Just Breathe, Kelsey. It's been a long time, I will say. I don't know when the last time I posted on this channel, so I'm not even going to hold you because it's probably been a while. But I wanted to get on here because the the last video I did, I talked about me publishing my first book on Kindle. Yay. So I don't know if I'm coming off of a high or if I am, what I want to say, if I'm still reeling in the the glow of releasing my book. So one thing that I am learning through the Kindle Direct Publishing is that they don't notify you as far as like books being sold or people reading your books or anything. And I kind of like that because I'm taking a quote from Erica Badu where she's like, I'm an artist, so I'm sensitive about my my work. And granted, I'll take criticism, constructive criticism in due time, but with this being my baby, like of course I don't want people to hate it, but I also want people to give me feedback on what I could have done different or if they understood what I was trying to portray with my story. So I kind of like the fact that I'm in the dark on who is buying and who is reading, just because I'm kind of weird about people like reading my stuff or I'm just weird about it. I'm weird about it. But I will say that the amount of people that are supporting it, I'm surprised. Because, like I said, even if 5 people buy the book, that to me just goes to show that people are supporting it or people paid attention to it. And um and I'm happy with that. Like, granted, I'm not making a lot of money off of it, but the fact that I published a story that I felt proud of makes me happy. And like I said, it's a full circle moment. I don't know how I'm processing it. I don't know if I'm necessarily processing it. I don't know if um I don't know if I'm taking it all in because there's a lot of people that don't even know that I wrote a book and have published a book. I was at work the other day and it was when I first released it. And my my sort manager, made an announcement in the meeting that I had published a book. And even when he was talking about it, I was like, ooh, like and it's not like I was, um, what I want to say, it's not that I asked him to do it, but it was just weird for him to do it because I don't like bragging about myself and I don't like to be, and I'm a Leo. Supposedly, we like to be the center of attention. But for me, sometimes I don't like being in the center of attention. So I always downplay myself. And I want to be better with that, especially now that I'm 30 years old. And it's like, no, like you are great. You're a good person. You published a book. You don't know anybody who published a book on their own, basically. I mean, I know somebody that published a book, but they went through like a publishing company. But even then, that person technically didn't write it, but you drew the design for the cover. You was the editor, you was the proofreader. Like everything that you did was you. And you created the format to make it an ebook, whatever. Like this is literally my baby that I use. Like, yeah, I'm using a platform that's going to sell it, market it, yada yada yada, but like the real work that it takes to make a book, you did it on your own by yourself, and you took that leap of faith of doing it. So, but that's not what I wanted to jump on here about. I wanted to jump on here because it's been, I want to say it's 13th. So it's been almost 2 weeks since I published the book. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the book in general and just my thought process of making the book. Or, yeah, my thought process of making the book, kind of, but also giving spoilers of what the book is. So, if you have not read the book, please don't watch the rest of it because I am going to give a spoiler. If you have read the book, it's more so of a discussion or a little bit more of a background as of the story itself, I guess, in a sense. So you have two characters, Isaac and Dee. And you're introduced to Isaac, who is the main character, the one that you're listening to, the dialogue that you're listening to as you're reading the story. And he's talking about Dee, someone that he falls in love with. They get in a relationship. Um, Basically, he's writing a letter or is speaking to Dee as a remembrance of their relationship. And you soon, in that process, you're kind of getting little glimpses of Dee, her personality, who she is, how she navigates, and just her dynamic of her life. And you get little hints here and there. It's not blatant, but you just get like little glimpses of how she is, who she is, what she is, etc., etc. And even though there are certain things that you can pick up through Dee's personality, what she does for work, um, how she interacts with Isaac and things like that, there's still a mystery to her. So there's not like, you don't get everything all at once. And that's what I wanted, was for the reader to, one, understand Isaac's point of view of looking at Dee and seeing how she navigates in the world and how she just navigates in relationships and how she navigates with herself, but also how she interacts with Isaac and also how Isaac interacts with her. Um, I wanted that, but I also wanted the reader to be kind of just from the outside looking in, seeing their relationship and how he treats her and how he speaks to her and how they act with each other. So you still get like a glimpse of Dee, of who she is, but you're still like unknown. It's like, like I understand and I can see like a little bit of their relationship forming and things like that, but there's still something that I don't know about her. And that's what I wanted to implement in the book. There's a scene, or there's a part in the book where Isaac asks Dee's real name. So just that implication, it kind of, because of course they've dealt with each other for a couple of days or weeks, whatever. And there's still certain things that Isaac doesn't know about Dee. He knows a little bit, but he doesn't push her into revealing certain things. Um, Dee is considered a lady of the night, putting it nicely, and also fancy. But and I wanted to keep that aspect of Dee, is where, yeah, she's a lady of the night, but she still wants to, I don't know if autonomy is the right word, but she still wants love. She still wants something real. She doesn't necessarily want to stay in the job that she's in, but she would like to find something real. She wants to find something that eventually will get her out of it, but she's still guarded because of the profession that she's in, that she does keep things secret. She does hold back. She does, um, she, she is leery of letting people in. So I played on that to help the reader also stay in the dark as well, you know. So when Isaac asks her real name, she's still holding on to that part of her that's like, like, we're just kind of hooking up and things like that. Like, you're not one of my customers, but this is more so of like, I like you, and you're not work. You're actually fun. You're a breath of fresh air for me, you know, in that sense. So when he asks her name, that's where she gets defensive of like, why? Like, I think where we are, we're good. I'm perfectly fine with that. Like, you know, like I said, I like you, but I don't want to be put in a situation where I get too attached and it's not something that's going to stick. So when she reveals her name to Isaac in secret of the reader, that's where you kind of see her open up a little more, because, and I didn't put it in the story, but Dee revealing her name to Isaac is almost like a step into their relationship towards intimacy. So making it more real for Dee and Isaac's relationship. And in the next chapter, in the next scene, you see Isaac going big and going all out for Dee and treating her like a princess in a sense. Showing her a good time, taking her out on a date, something that she's never really experienced. Of course, she's had maybe a couple of relationships in the past, but not relationships as grand as Isaac is showing her, or Isaac is doing for her. And it it is cliche on that whole like pretty woman type of thing, but that's not what I was really going for. I was more or less going for Dee being shown that even though she is different, even though that she is um, bringing her more out of her shell and being okay with um, allowing someone to, one, take the burden off of her, but also to be a safe ground for her. Because even though she is confident in herself and who she is and what she does, she still has reserves on, is this something that I can actually attain? Yeah, I get customers, I have people around me that show me love, but like, is that something that I'm worth having? And I feel as though Isaac does a pretty good job with exposing that to her, but also in a turn, Isaac has never done this for anybody. He's been in relationships, he's had women before, but D is someone that is getting him out of his comfort zone and he wants to, do this for her. He wants to take her out. He wants to show her off from his comfort zone. Because again, he has a different life that she doesn't know about. So they both are keeping secrets from each other because one lives this lifestyle, the other lives this lifestyle. They both have two separate lives, but they also kind of coincide with each other, but they also want to separate themselves from their lives, but also be together. The main thing is the magic is when they're together in their own space outside of what they do and who they are when they're outside in their own world. So that's when you see later when they have an argument that, Dia's like, as much as you try to, I'm just paraphrasing, but when D is telling Isaac, as much as you try to sit up there and say that you love me, you are still keeping secrets from me. You're still wanting to be a part of that life. And granted, I understand that's what you know, but this is what I know as well. And I want to move forward with you, with, our relationship, but we can't move forward if we're always looking back at the past, basically. Again, I didn't write it that way, but this is just my thought process when writing the story. And even with Isaac, he doesn't like the fact that, even though him and D are together, that she's still doing her old job. And of course, it frustrates both of them because they both come from complex backgrounds and they, again, are navigating a new relationship, and they still kind of don't trust their love in a sense. In a sense. And that's kind of what I wanted to bring to the story, is the complication of their lifestyles. So, and I feel as though I did it beautifully. I think it could have been better in some areas to make it a little bit more, to make it, to show more conflict without it being cliche. But again, like I said, I felt, or I feel, that what I have was good enough to publish. And I've read books that wasn't up to par in my understanding, but it makes sense. So anyway, So there's that conflict. And throughout the story, you get little hints of who Dee is, even though you don't really get her name until the end of the story. Um, you get little hints of kind of Dee's personality, but just how she thinks of herself. Again, she is confident in who she is, but she says in one of the chapters um that old habits are hard to kick. Like she wants to change, she wants to do better, but old habits always come back up to make her feel like this is how it's gonna be. So I'll say one example was, ooh, I feel like I shouldn't say it, but she, because I feel like I'm going to get flagged for it. But I will say a disclaimer, this is talking about a a topic that is very known for people that um involve in harm towards themselves. So there is a disclaimer. So I will say disclaimer that this is talking about um I'm trying to say it without saying it because I don't want to put restrictions on this video, but you get what I mean. It involves wrist. And that's all I'm going to say. Because I don't want to flag it. I don't want to get flagged. But there is a scene where Isaac is looking fully at um, Dee's body. And I'm trying to think of the word that I use. I know exactly what I used. But, they're getting intimate. And he takes off an article of clothing. And he's like, that's when I see the insecurities that you have, like all the scars I see on your body. I see the insecurities, like Dee being fully naked, he sees all of her. And I feel like that's one hint, and it's very subtle. It's very subtle that you see it, but you're just reading it and you're like, oh yeah, okay, you get an idea of what she does to herself. um but also, like, a lot of people are insecure about their bodies, whether it's man, woman, dog, cat, bird, tarantula, etc., etc. Like we all experience like insecurities with our body. So there's one, or that's one hint. um Also, she says that I'm not like other girls. And I feel like, again, that is a cliche because you get a you get that a lot in like a lot of romance books and movies where the woman will say, I'm not like a lot of women. And even sometimes the men will say, I'm not like a lot of men. And that's also your hint as well, because you're led to believe that she's saying, like, I'm not like other women that you've dealt with in the past, from my assumption. And that's also a hint as well, because you think she's talking about her job. So, and of course, she is in the profession, things like that. And there's another hint. Um, Incisions. Um, so you also get the hint that she has um made changes to her body So that also goes back to an insecurity of how she is presented out in the public. So that's also a hint. Another hint is her name. D is literally the letter D. And I did that for a reason. I was going to do DEE for D, but I was like, no, because that's not what I want. You know, and I could have done another name, but I was like, no, I like D. And like her name being the actual D, because it can go for anything. And that's also a hint as well, because you're like, I never really seen anybody with the name D. Unless it's like, what up, D? Something like that. And when you write it, it's either D or DEE. But even then, depending on how it's written, and I liked just the D part. So that's also a hint as well. Um there's also a scene where Isaac is talking about, them going on trips, and they go on vacation to San Francisco. Now, if you don't know the history of San Francisco, I suggest that you look up culture and history of San Francisco, parades, things of that nature. So they go to a parade in San Francisco to celebrate the culture. Like I said, understand your history with San Francisco. And that'll kind of give you a hint on it'll give you a hint. Um where was I going with that? So, and I'm trying to think if there was something else. There was other hints in the story that kind of give you like, again, it's subtle hints, but you're like, oh, okay, yeah, all right, they're living life. So then at the end, and here's the spoiler, at the end, you don't get Dee's real name until that last sentence. And when you read it back, you come to realize that D is actually Derek. So Isaac is confessing his love to a trans woman. And I knew that was the story I wanted to tell. Now, I'm not a part of the LGBTQIA plus community, and I'm not necessarily a LGBTQIA plus writer. Like, those aren't stories that I specifically write about all the time, nor do I don't want to say nor do I care about telling the stories, but it was something that I felt I wanted to tell. So H.e.r is not necessarily the main story. I've said it multiple times in multiple videos that H.e.r is basically a side story to the main story. And when I was writing the main story, or at least coming up with the ideas of the main story, I knew that I wanted to talk about Isaac's relationship with D, because they were going to be a significant part in the main story, because it was all going to come together and make sense. Because, so And I don't mind talking about it. But Mason is basically the main story, and he's a young boy. His mother is going through like a mental health thing, and it gets to a point where his mother cannot take care of him, and basically his welfare is compromised. But he's smart. He's, a kind boy. He's shy, but he's also book smart. He's a good kid. And Isaac's friend, homeboy, um, I wouldn't say a leader of the gang, but they're in the game, in a game. He takes a liking to Mason, not in a sense of like wanting to recruit him to be a part of the gang, but just like, he's the neighbor of Mason and his mom, and he sees potential in Mason actually getting out of the hood or just out of their neighborhood and making something of himself. And he always looked out for him because he sees how his mom is treating him and things like that. And I didn't know if I wanted to like make it to where Isaac's friend Scar was like used to mess with Mason's mom, or that's his cousin, or like I didn't know how I wanted to do the relationship with him and Mason, but he notices things with Mason and his mom, and he feels sorry for him, but he always looked out for him because he's a good kid. He don't bother nobody. Of course, his mom having spats and things like that and issues. So Scar takes a liking to Mason, and instead of having Mason be put into the foster care system and um just life not turning out well for him, etc., etc., Scar decides to become his guardian. And along with that, he recruits Isaac and is like, hey, man, we got to help this kid out, basically. And later down the line, I was thinking that Scar gets into a bit of trouble, and he basically recruits Isaac to take over for him. And while that is, Isaac and Dee are in a relationship, and they become Mason's parents essentially as he continues on and he goes off to college, etc., etc. So that's where Dee and that's where Dee and Isaac come into play with the main story, because once Scar is out of the picture, then that's Mason's new family in a sense. So I knew that's what I wanted to do with the main story with the side story characters. And again, Her is a side story to the main story with Mason, but we don't get introduced to Mason in Her because that's something separated. That's before all that takes place. So I wanted to do um, their story as I guess, a prequel in a sense to the events that take place before Mason becomes a part of their storyline in a sense, I guess. But I was having trouble with writing Mason's story, and like I had started it, but then I was like, man, I'm not into it. But when I wrote Her, I was into it, and it was like my creative expression or my creative freedom just went full blown. Um, and I actually enjoyed writing it. And that's why I published it. um, but anyway, I knew I wanted Isaac to be different. Different in a sense of it's, I'm not saying that people that are in the game are down low or, have fetishes or are intrigued by people in the LGBTQIA community. I'm not saying that. But I am saying that there is a possibility that it's a story that needs to be tapped into or a story that has not been told. Um, you know, and I didn't know if I wanted to make it where I didn't want to make it to where Isaac has like always felt this way about trans women or just men in general. I didn't know because I did think about the conversation that he would have with Scar because they're homeboys. They've known each other for years. They've been to each other's house. They spent the night at each other's house. They grew up together, etc., etc. Like that's his homeboy, that's his brother, that's his brother. And I didn't know if I wanted to have Scar always be attracted to men presenting as women or if I wanted him to be that. But I wanted him to be open to exploring that with D. Because, and even I wrote that, Isaac says, I've never felt for anyone, for someone like you. And that also brings kind of a mystery to D because it's like, well, what does she bring that nobody else brings? And I mean, you feel that way with your first, well, maybe not your first, but well, I guess yeah, in your first, but like you don't feel that way. You don't. What do I want to? How do I want to put it? You, when you find the one, or when you find somebody that you truly care about, it's an unexplainable feeling, and that's what I wanted to portray. That's why I didn't really focus on him being attracted to necessarily a trans woman. I just wanted him to be attracted to a person. That sounds so weird on me saying it. But I wanted him to be attracted to D as a person. Not so much how she was presenting herself, but just her as a person. There was something about her that he liked and that he was attracted to. And he didn't care that she was a trans woman. Like, I mean, he could see it, and he learned more about her and he was okay with it. And again, you kind of see that internal struggle with himself because, yeah, he loves D and he cares about her deeply and he wants to go on with life. He wants to do life with her. But he also is nervous on how his family, his friends will take this because they don't know him as a person that's attracted to a trans woman. They know him as Ice. They know him as this hard person. They wouldn't think twice of him, you know, dating a trans person. Like he's never shown signs. He's never really like gave vibes of it, but he's never presented himself in that way. So I didn't know if I wanted him to like always be gay, but I think I think I could have done a better job with him, like, slowly being intrigued with D. But again, you kind of get it in the first chapter where he's like looking at her, and he's studying her, and he's like, wow, there's something about you that I'm attracted to. And you kind of understand his attraction a little bit. But again, it is a love letter or a love dialogue, so you don't really get like the full, you don't get his full mind because he's talking to D, because he's always using you statements, and you don't really get it until the end that D is trans. So, and like I said, I'm not a LGBTQIA writer. I don't really tell LGBTQIA plus stories. This just so happened to be a story that I wanted to talk about. I felt like it was a story that wasn't really told. And the reason why I was telling it is because I think overall, and this is not just LGBTQIA plus stories, but we always you get stories of people that don't match. In this case, a cis man dating a trans woman. Even though, yes, it's 2025, everything's open arms, shoot, people dating monkeys, I don't know. But like, it's a story that I felt at the time wasn't being told. But also take cisgendered out of it, take trans woman out of it. Technically, they're not supposed to match. Technically. You know, how can I explain it to make it make sense? People that don't match, you never really hear of those stories. Like, I'll say a masculine female dating a feminine male. You don't hear about stories like that. Or you don't. It's two things that wouldn't match, because you would think a masculine woman would be attracted to a feminine woman, because usually masculine women are considered lesbians, and same for a feminine male would be attracted to a masculine male, and they would be a gay couple. But when you see a feminine male and a masculine woman together, you're like, huh? That's interesting. That's not supposed to be. Or it's not, it's queer. And forgive me if I'm using the wrong terms, but it was just my thought process when I was making the story. Of two people that shouldn't be together, wind up being together, and it works for them. And that was the story I wanted to tell with this. But I always knew that D was going to be who she was. Isaac was going to be who he was. And, it's kind of playing out in the Chi with Trig, and I guess he's not with anybody right now, technically in season, I think, is it season 7 or season 6? I think it's season 7 or season, yeah. Yeah, I think they're in season 7 right now. But like with Trig, that's basically Isaac with her. Now, I wrote this story before The Chi came out, but basically that's who Ice is. He's Trig, and then the trans women that Trig is dating would be D. Again, they don't match, but it works. It's their story. So, yeah. And if you watch the Chi, that's basically how I wanted my story to be. Kind of. But yeah. And I like I said, when you read it, you're like, wait, what? That's so then you can go back and you can like see the little details. And that's what I wanted with this story, is that you don't come to that realization until the end that D is actually a trans woman. But again, you get little hints here and there of who she is, her lifestyle, and things like that. And even Isaac is keeping her secret as well, like as he's explaining, because again, he's insecure about, bringing her into his life. And even though she's all for bringing him a part of her life in a sense, he's the exact opposite, because he's one, well, he even says it like, I can't love you the way that you love me. Like, I love you, but I'm just not ready to expose that to everybody just because I'm not comfortable with it. Like, I love you and I want to do things, I want to live life with you, but I can't bring myself to doing that. And of course, that breaks Dee's heart because, she, and I'm going to use she because that's the pronouns that she uses. Even though it's not really talked about. But again, like, you assume as you're reading it that D is a woman, but she's just going by D because she doesn't want anybody to know her real name. But of course, she's heartbroken. She has finally found love, and it's a literal fairy tale. And basically her fairy tale is getting crushed because she thought she found something real. She thought she found the one. And essentially she did. Later on they, make up and whatever. But that's a whole nother book. But like, she thought she found real true love. And the man that she loves is basically saying, hey, I don't love you. But he's saying that I do love you, but I just can't love you the way that you want me to. I can't love you out loud like you love me out loud. Just because there's still insecurities that I'm dealing with this relationship, and just knowing that my life will change once you become a part of it. I become a part of your life, and the only thing that you really have to worry about is, staying in your profession. But if I bring you around to my friends and my family, then that changes how people look at me overall, you know. So I really do like that dynamic um of that, both internal conflict with each other. D has a conflict with wanting her outside to match her inside, because on the inside she's comfortable with, her wearing the dresses, her having the long hair, her being okay with her sexuality, who she is as a person. But she still has those insecurities because her outside still reflect who she is born as, and she's born as a male. And she's wanting to change that. And with Isaac, he is in a, I don't want to say mindset, but he's he's in a world where him being attracted to a trans woman is not acceptable. And if you would have talked to him 5 years ago, he would have been ragging on the person that, if they came to him, he probably would be ragging on them. So he's dealing with the outside conflict. He's okay with the inside part of him, but he's not okay with the outside part of him, as far as like loving a trans person. And D is okay with the inside portion of herself internally, and she doesn't care what the outside world is thinking, but she cares about her outside appearance, as far as like changing herself. So is both conflicts with the individual themselves, and that's what I loved about writing this story. Even though it is a short story, I didn't think, and it's also a side story as well, I didn't think making it longer was going to, um what I want to say, I didn't think making it longer was going to be beneficial. I felt like it's just an introductory to these characters. It's basically an insight to just this relationship itself. Um and it was a story that, overall, it is a story that I felt okay to publish. And I know I will probably get critics about the story itself, how I phrased it, yada yada yada. And granted, I value it, but I'm also I'm also learning. I'm also, you know, I don't know. I don't know. Um Overall, I do enjoy the story. And I think that's the main thing. And I was definitely all over the place. I think I should have wrote down questions, but I also wanted to talk free form about it. But it is published. It is on Amazon.com. You can get the paperback, or you can read it through Kindle. You can either buy it on Kindle or you can read it for free. Regardless, I appreciate either one. It is my first book. It will not be my last. I don't know if I will continue on with I don't think I would continue on with Isaac and Dee's story. I don't know if I would restart Mason's story. I don't know if I would do another side story. I don't know. Um I don't know what my next book would be. I would like to do like an activity or a coloring book, but I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if I'm pretty I know for sure I got more stories. I got more stories. I just have not tapped into them yet. Um I think I would personally I would like to write a Christian story or do like more Christian based stories. Um, I this video is gonna be long, but I remember, and it's a Kimani True book, and it's this girl where she is basically, huh, I could write that, but basically she, this isn't my story, but it's a Kimani True book, and she is a part of, I guess, a purity group at her church, and it's called Worth the Wait. So it's a bunch of young girls at this church, and they take a vow to God to wait until marriage. And of course, she's pretty, she's on the cheerleading team. So, there's guys that will try to tempt her into losing her virginity to them. But she sustains. She's like, no, I made a promise that I'm holding myself for my husband. And I think I could see myself writing a story about that just from my perspective, because when I was young and I would read like young adult books and teen books, of course, they some talked about sex, others like actually wrote about it, and then others, well, one book that I did read was Dirty Old Men by H.e.r. And I would say that's a pretty good book, but it's like a compilation of books, or a compilation of stories. And I guess I felt like I needed to, in order for my story to be interesting, I needed to write my characters as having sex. And especially the college life series that I wrote, I my my male characters, a good amount of them had sex. And one of the females that was in the guy group, she was a virgin, and then one of the guys had sex with her, and then she's not a virgin no more. And then they got into a relationship, and of course they was having sex and things like that. It's not saying that people don't have sex, but there's also a group of people that don't, like, they are waiting for marriage, or they are um wanting to be celibate. And me, I, and this might cause a lot of controversy, I was a virgin for basically 27 years. And well, if I say if I was put in a situation where, that kind of sounds like, ooh. But I don't even know if I guess I did make the final choice to lose my virginity. I'm not, I go back and forth on whether I regret it or not. I mean, I take accountability to say that I could have said no at any time. And I felt like I was already anyway. Um I consider myself a born again virgin. Um and that's just my personal opinion. You can debate me on it, whatever, but I consider myself a born again virgin, and that might be blasphemy, but argue with your mama. But either way, technically I'm celibate right now, and I'm 30 years old. So I've been celibate for 3 years. Um so I come to realize that the stories I wrote when I was a virgin and they had sex scenes, it kind of makes me cringe now. Cause I'm like, I don't want to talk about sex in my stories. Like, and I was writing about young adults, like 18. I would say the age range from like 17 to 25. Excuse me. But I was rereading one of my shorts, and I didn't finish it. I don't know if I ever will finish it because I don't know how. At the time I knew how I wanted to end it, but now that I'm older, I'm like, I don't know how I would end it. Like, I don't know how I would end the story. But I wrote down um my my ideas on the chapters, and I put down that two of the characters had sex, and I was like, I don't want that to be a reality for this story. And I've come to realization that um I don't want to write about it, because in my experience, like, yeah, I glorified it because everybody around me was doing it, and it seemed like such a big deal. But then when I had it, I was like, I mean, it was okay, but I'm is this it? But then as I'm getting older, I'm also realizing that sex is a very intimate thing with your partner, basically with your husband or wife. And people going to debate me on that, which is fine, but I personally believe that the best sex that you will have is with the one that is destined to be your husband or wife, not somebody that you are attracted to and you guys get married and you get married off of lust. I'm talking about actual marriage of love. And that might be subjective, that might be objective, but I truly believe that the one that is truly for you, not someone that you make for you, that will be the best sex of your life. Point blank period. We can debate it, we can talk about it, whatever. But that's just what I truly believe. And I'm gonna end it on that as far as that discussion. Uh I just came to realization that I just don't want to write about sex in my stories. And that's a creative choice that I'm choosing. And it's easy to write stories that aren't based on it. I mean, there's tons of books that don't include sex, but they are still number one bestsellers. So I think I can see myself writing a story maybe not my memoir, but I can see myself writing a story about my journey on sex and intimacy with men, boys, guys, I guess. I just don't know how I would start it. That is one thing I have trouble with when it comes to writing is like starting a story. Ending it, depending on like what it is, I find easy to do. Like ending a story I find easy. Telling the story I find easy, but starting the story, that's what I have difficulty with. So, like, I can give you the idea, and I can give you like the corner, like I can give you the cheese, the meat, the lettuce, tomatoes, the onions, the condiments, and things like that, and I can give you the end bread, but I can't. Something about the top bread, or I guess the bottom bread, or whatever, the start of the sandwich. That's where I struggle with. But building the sandwich and putting that last layer on there, or that last piece of bread on there, I got you. So, I'm trying to think if there was anything else I wanted to say. I think that's pretty much it. I said a lot, but I didn't say enough. But yeah, so the contest. But I wanted to end my first reason for being on here. Uh so overall, I do, and I haven't had anybody come to me and say how they felt about the book, but I will say that overall I do understand that there are some things that I could have done better with my story. There's also some things that I could have included. There's also things that I could have taken out, and there's also things that I've definitely could have done better as far as like descriptions, painting the picture, and a lot of things I could have done better. But also you also have to take into account that I wrote this story in 2018, 2017. So 2017, 2018 was a very different time than what it is in 2025. And there was a part of me that wanted to modernize it, but then there was also a part of me that's like, I want to leave it as is just because it's authentic to that time. So FaceTime wasn't really a thing. I think Skype was still like, it was kind of up and coming, and then, or shall I say, Zoom was kind of up and coming, but like nobody was really using Skype that much. It was more so for business and not so much for personal. Microsoft Teams wasn't available. Like I said, FaceTime wasn't a thing. um TikTok wasn't created, or probably, no, I don't think it was. I don't think it was created yet. But like Instagram, you didn't really have reels. Facebook was still kind of popping. So it's like social media was still at like the height, but it wasn't as big as it is now. Like content creators. And if I make her into a movie, um I would definitely change um uh I would definitely change Dee's profession. I would make her like kind of an OnlyFans um uh content creator type of thing. But then it kind of conflicts with Isaac's job as well, because he's a private person, or he tries to be private, And so I would have to figure that out. But like I would definitely make changes as far as that. So, but I mean, I did when I did rewrite it and edit it um I made slight changes. But again, like I said, I wanted to keep it as is. But anyway, on that note, I appreciate if anybody watches this. I appreciate the support. I'm still happy and content with what I published and what I put out there. I know that there will be some flack. I know that there will be some pushback, and that is perfectly fine. I'm not everybody's cup of tea, nor do I plan to be. If anything, um, Jesus should be everybody's cup of tea. Um, and I'm okay with what I put out. And of course I'm scared. I'm nervous about people judging it. But this is my um, crazy faith. This is literally something that God put on my heart, and I'm going full force with it. And like I said, if I make $5 from um, my book being published, I'm okay with that. I'm definitely okay. Because at the end of the day, it's in God's hands. And speaking of God's hands, when I published this story, Amazon, well, I guess technically the Kindle Direct Publishing is holding a contest, and basically it's a short story contest. So when you publish through Kindle Direct, and I don't know if this is like a yearly thing that they do, or it's just something that they've started doing within recent years. When you publish through them, you can sign up your story to be a contestant in their contest. And basically, what they do is they read your short story and they pick finalists on. So they have judges to judge the story itself, but then it's also the readers. So it depending on how many readers, how many people buy the story, it gets submitted through this contest. And you can win prizes. You could probably get a shout out or something like that. Um, and I signed up for it. Now, I with Kindle Direct Publishing, you don't get notified of any purchases of the book, and you don't get notified of how many people read the book. It's kind of just um, up in the air on when you get your money or when you get your royalties or whatever. And you know, another thing, that crazy faith. I just wanted to publish a book. So I put her a part of the contest. So Godspeed and God willing, if I become the finalist, if I win the contest, that that would blow my mind. That would really blow my mind. Even just to be nominated, I feel as though that is an accomplishment within itself. And I I guess I say to say is that I signed up for it, and whatever is to come about it comes about it. Um I would love to win. And I'm letting my story just speak for itself. And I don't know. I don't know. It is what it is. It's a part of the contest, or I submitted my work in the contest. So by God's grace and his will, that's also my crazy faith as well. Like I said, many more, maybe not. No. Many more stories to come. Whether I collaborate or I do it on my own. More stories to come. And I'm excited for the future of that. So, yep. I think that's it. I think that is it. I don't have nothing else to say. Till next time.